Hello, and welcome to the Crew Podcast. I am the visionary Queen Angela, and welcome to Season 2. I want to thank you for tuning in and for all of your support throughout Season 1. We're back, them Divas of the Airwaves. So thank you for joining us tonight. Share this with someone in your circle.
Aspiring Authors Magazine is a founding sponsor for Da Crew Podcast. Get featured inside the magazine and allow your voice to be heard around the world.
Aspiring Authors Magazine is an international magazine founded in May of 2020 by Queen Angela. Get featured.
And greetings, everyone. Welcome yet again to another live broadcast of Building a New Legacy here with the Crew Podcast. I'm one of the newer hosts. I am QueenMother, Dr. ChenziRa, and I'm hailing from St. Croix, Virgin Islands, the Caribbean, south of the Caribbean. How about that? We're really looking forward to being able to talk about ideas, actions, thoughts, and of course, actionable deliverables. If you don't have that hashtag as part of your network, hashtag actionable deliverables, for us to really discuss some of the things that are impacting our building blocks of society, things that are impacting our community, things that are impacting our men folk, our women folk, but also our families, our communities, and how do we build, rebuild, strengthen, and heal a new legacy. One of the things that we're going to do tonight, and just because of the nature of nature, my original invited guest, none other than the illustrious young scholar, legalese, attorney, youth advocate, United Nations Fellow, International Decade for People of African Descent Fellow, Genevieve Whittaker, hailing from right here in St. Croix, Virgin Islands, as well as a former senator of the legislature of the Virgin Islands, is unable to join me, but she will join in the very near future. And we're looking forward to her bringing some contributions, more correctly, life-centered energy to how we begin to speak of building a new legacy. And we spell a new ANU to really ground it in a new legacy. It gives us an opportunity to really speak what persons refer to as truth to power. It allows for us to also highlight some of the observances that are happening within our given community and some of the things that we tend to take a moment to delay how we engage and share. I want to do something very different tonight in regard to what I did last night. And it's a publication called Living Life as a Sacred Practice. And it's a wonderful publication. It allows the subtitle, Discover Yourself as a Source of Creation. And it's produced by none other than my sister in spirit and in organizational work, grounded and based in Jamaica, and one of the founders of the Temple of Inner Peace in Jamaica. Wonderful spot to visit when you're in Jamaica, especially if you're in the area of Negril. And her name is Sharon Paris Chambers. We call her Sister Queen Sharon Oshun Paris Chambers. But I wanted to just highlight a particular piece inside of her work because of all of the turmoil, all of the challenges, all of the stress and anxiety and rage and anger and all this vibrational energy that's affecting persons. And we wanted to shift that, right? And this particular piece is how she opens. Peace is more than an absence of war. It is an innate state of a conscious human being. I'm going to read that again. Peace is more than an absence of war. It is the innate state of a conscious human being. And that is a quotation from Sister Queen Sharon Oshun Paris Chambers of the Temple of Inner Peace. But I wanted to also share, because she has these quotes inside of her publication, and then she outlines and gives some food for thought and action. Not just food for thought. So it's not just dealing with the mind, not just dealing with the consciousness, but it's also, how do we practice this? How do we implement this? How do we add this to our day-to-day activities? And it reads as follows. We all long for peace in the world. Every day there are images on the TV screen that impress on the screen of our minds that this is a dangerous world. Images of crime, death, and dying, war, report of wars, and weapons stockpiling on the nightly news. Do not allow the excesses shared by the media daily to shake your composure. Allow what we know deep in the recesses of our soul to surface. There is an innate peace that pacifies the soul. I'm going to read that particular sentence one more time. There is an innate peace that pacifies the soul. And again, like I said, I'd like to be able to bring some of these tidbits, these proverbial sayings, these chants, these prayers, these affirmations in ways that we can really add that to building a new legacy. There's an opportunity for us to really bring these things in a format that allows for us to shift the paradigm of how we engage, how we speak to one another, how we show love and respect and care for one another. And even if we are to speak in silence, because silence is another form of speech. And how do we maintain a silence that is healing and rectifies some of the imbalance that happens in some of our relations, which is a reality within our community. So we're going to just take a moment, kind of swift, shivel and move around some different ideas and thoughts. Part of what we're going to do tonight, in light of the fact that, as I was sharing before we started this broadcast, here in St. Croix, Virgin Islands, we have had the joy and privilege of definitely being within the seat of the Caribbean. And with that comes weather. Sometimes the weather is really beautiful, sand, sea, sun, fun. And sometimes we may get torrential rains. We may get floods. So we want to definitely send a shout out to some of our sisters and brothers that have been going through things in this area, in this region, because not only is it the Sahara dust coming from the African continent across the Atlantic, sounds familiar, and affecting our air quality, it is also shifting and making certain areas exposed to flooding. And so we want to make sure that everyone maintains safety, warmth, and that they're dry and that there's minimal damage. It's not a hurricane. That's a whole other conversation. And we'll come to that when it's closer to that season. But there we do get some different rains that impact our region. And so for those children that have had to stay at home while things are being repaired and upgraded in their respective institutions, we want to send those positive shout outs, and so that they do not have this continue in the course of the time here in our region of the Virgin Islands and the wider Caribbean. Something that has been coming up in our discussions, and when I say our discussions, there are a number of organizational entities that many of us are centripetal to. So whether it is through the lens of what is happening in Africa during African Black History Month, because as quiet as it's kept, we definitely like to make sure that we too streamline and highlight those opportunities in our community that let us give honor to at least the theme for African Black History Month for 2024, which is none other than African Americans and the arts. So this is a great opportunity for persons in all walks of life to feature those achievers, those contributors, those gifts, talents, and expertise that were shared specifically by African Americans and in the realm of the arts, in all aspects, whether it's culinary arts, visual arts, performative arts, and there's even more visual arts. We want all the painters, the sculptors, etc. And we are able to use this as a time to highlight what are those exhibitions, what are those curating experiences that are being shared, and how is it going across to impact the wider communities that we serve, work, worship, recreate, and live in. So I encourage persons to also learn a little bit more about the Association for the Study of African American Life and History. I'll say that again. I know it is ASALH because I remember that, but I think it should be spelled out. The Association for the Study of African American Life and History. And why do I take a moment to pause in speaking of ASALH? Because ASALH was established in 1915 by the second African American to earn a PhD from Harvard University, none other than the Honorable Dr. Carter G. Woodson. And I think it's important when we talk about African Black History Month or African American History Month or Black History Month, however you know it as, it's important that not so much that February is a short month, and this year we have leap year, so it's a little extra, but the fact that ASALH continues to keep the legacy of the Honorable Dr. Carter G. Woodson alive and engaged and supported. I think that that speaks volumes in regard to having an association that has endured, again, over 100 years of engagement, of publications, of resource development, of course, professional development, and that while it's focusing on history, it is also crossing over into other disciplines. And some persons may or may not find that as something that's of particular interest. Some people feel that history's got to be very dry, but we're speaking in the 21st century where it's very animated. It is very interactive, and you can touch it and feel it, and it's tangible. For example, some of the wonderful exhibitions that are part of the Smithsonian's National Museum of African American History and Culture that really celebrates African life. African American life is at the center, yes, and that corresponds to the entire African experience around the globe. And they have done that and continue to do that with a multiplicity of exhibitions and corridors that tell the legacy and give the narrative of people of African ancestry exceptionally well. And I wanted to highlight that. I think too that this is an opportunity, and I encourage persons, I have put that inside of the chat, just so the persons are comfortable with some of the things that we may want to look at. You know, I tell people Asala, and you can easily go to ASALH, again, ASALH.org, just so that you can add to your resources, your knowledge base, your wise counsel engagements when we're talking about African American History Month. And it gives people an opportunity to not only look at it from an academic space, but to look at it in a very pragmatic, practical, communitarian space. So the persons are really able to move that forward. I want to give a special shout out to the authors that are joining me. I'm very grateful for your support and your presence. It means a lot for me because you all have set a standard that I'm really doing my best to just be a participant of. It's really wonderful to have sisters that really come forward and show that level of support and engagement. I always give a special shout out to Sister Queen Angela, just because she saw something that I may not have been able to have an opportunity to share. And so for that, I'm very grateful as well. So we're going to take a moment. We're going to, I like bringing up music and shifting, because it's not just going to be just talk, but I'd like to make sure that we have an opportunity to really share some of the ideas, thoughts, and concepts that impact each and every one of us. I like the particular selection that we were listening to, primarily because In Sync is an instrumental by one of our artists right here, a phenomenal professor, composer, arranger, of course, a professional musician. And as an educator of music, Brother Khadija really shares a lot of his skill, talent, and expertise. So we'll just listen to a few more bars. Very grateful to be able to share that while I'm even speaking, because we need to do what we call wheel and come again. Just wheel and come again. One more time. I'm really grateful to be able to share Brother Khadijo's music because, one, it's original, and two, it gives us an opportunity to really see exactly how we participate in the process of sharing methods, traditions, cultural heritage, strategies, artistic talent, and fuse it together so it's interdisciplinary and purposeful. A lot of times when we're speaking of building a new legacy, persons immediately take it into like a very political, and some things are political, or very economic. Most things are economic. But we also get an opportunity to highlight the skills, talents, and expertise that all of us share. And that's something that expands so that when we speak of things like African American History Month, which we know African American history is 365, this year, 366 days, 24/7, every squinette, smaller than a second. And so we incorporate that. And with doing that, it is always inclusive. And it is still very clear of how we begin to share in our conversations, in our engagements, in some of our motivations, as well as some of the activities that we like to do, and those that we may not like to do, but that are good for us, right? So that lets me go to another point. And I like using different publications from some of my colleagues, and I also like using publications that are relatively fresh and relatively new, primarily because I think that it's really critical when we talk about what are we observing during the month of February and what are some of the observances. I always take persons to, have you ever just done a very quick search of like what are some of the international days that the and agencies like the United Nations highlights? I'm just curious if persons ever think about these international days that are hosted by the UN. And the reason I ask has a lot to do with sometimes we overlook that there are a number of observances for, it seems like every day there's a holiday. Every day there's something that we can celebrate. True, we rise, we give thanks for life. And I'm saying that in addition to that, during the month of February, we have a number of different observances that take place. You know, there was been a lot of buzz around the forthcoming One Love film, you know, as a featuring the life or a particular thread of the life of Robert, Bob, Nestor Marley, right? And there's a whole lot of buzz around that. The fact that they're doing this premiere, at least to the rest of the world, on February 14th, which is Valentine's Day, is observed in the US, at least in the 48 contiguous US primarily. And that February 6th marked, this year was was the anniversary of his 79th year, had he still been alive, right? And I think that that brings a whole lot of conversation and a lot of discussion around the power of reggae, him being viewed as a prophet in the eyes of many, using music that most of us know. Almost everyone knows at least two Bob Marley songs really well, where we can listen and act like we're doing karaoke and do all the bobbing and thinking that we're definitely skanking and doing a little ska all the time. And this is like anywhere in the world where persons do not even speak English, that we've been able to see the power of this artist. So again, that's something that opens up in the beginning of February. There are a number of other observances. There's like International Mother Language Day. Who would have known that the United Nations has an actual designation of February 21st as International Mother Language Day? Like little things like that. I think it's important. There's the World Day of Social Justice, which is the 20th of February. And again, not my observances. These are observances that have been brought forth. If you go to the United Nations website, and you can easily just go to un.org and then put in international days, and it will give you a plethora of the different observances that are formalized by the United Nations, UNESCO, and some of their other respective agencies. I think that these are the types of things, and there's some that are more specific and quite long, so I will spare you some of that, but I think it's important. Like some persons overlook like the International Day of Women and Girls in Science. That's important because we have a lot of activities that are happening geared around science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. But we also have seen it shift from science, technology, engineering, and math, and they've added which was STEM, and then they added the A, STEAM, and then they've added reading. So that makes it stream. So we've elevated, right? And I think it's really important for persons to remember that February 11th is designated as a day an International Day of women and girls in science. So it allows for the achievements, the opportunities, some of the wonderful research and projects and inventions and innovations that women and girls have contributed to the sciences. I think that's a wonderful observance that sometimes we overlook. And it's not to say that it's intentional, but it's just because sometimes we simply do not know. And that gives us another opportunity to speak truth to power, as one of our Babas, Senghor Baye of the UNIA ACL RC 2020, who is the first Assistant President General, always highlights, like he has made that a mantra amongst many of us in a very powerful way, speaking truth to power. And I'm sure there's others that have said it, but I'm just going by the elder that says it quite frequently around us. Also on the 13th, and it's very powerful that while we're doing this podcast and sharing this type of information, that there's also an observance on February 13th, which is World Radio Day. So wherever you are in the world, that is an excellent day and a wonderful opportunity to speak on radio, share radio links, share podcasts, deal with recordings, and bring that type of information so that everyone, whatever your voice is, whatever you'd like to share, let us just spread that around the globe. You know, this is a great time to shift, transform these paradigms, these common experiences where persons are really in that space, as our sister said, where we were overlooking the power of peace and the power of how innate peace is into our consciousness as human beings. So this gives us another opportunity to give a message, give a shout out, give a sharing, something that's uplifting, that really keeps people together and moving in a very strong form. It is also a number of other opportunities for persons to really start to prepare. And I tell persons, you know, February is like our anchoring. You know, people are recovering from all the holidays in January. There's a lot of things that happen in January as well that lead out of the day where we are doing a lot of community service, honoring the Honorable Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. It was wonderful to actually celebrate his birthday, what we refer to as his Earth Strong, on the actual day. So it was wonderful to have the celebrations and observances on the actual day. Usually we have to pick a Monday that's usually before or after. And I think it's really wonderful that this year there were a lot of different activities and themes that took place that supported his vision of not only civil rights, human rights as well, and not only civil disobedience, but balance and justice. Those are the things that really stuck out in terms of many of the activities, some of the presentations that were highlighted, some of the youth that were doing reenactments of becoming like leader, you know, similar to the leadership that was provided by the Honorable Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And then I thought it was interesting that around this time, there was also this reminder of the diversity, yet the commonality of the work of the Honorable Dr. Martin Luther King, as well as the Honorable El Hajj Malik El Shabazz, that we have come to know as Malcolm X. I think it was really powerful. There have been films that are highlighting that. There have been plays that have been spreading around the community like wildfire. Right here in the Virgin Islands, here on St. Croix, our Caribbean Community Theater did a production around the same time of a hypothetical conversation, a meeting between, the meeting between Martin, the Honorable Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and the Honorable Malcolm X. It was a very, very telling play, right? And I thought that was really powerful to see that juxtaposed with this mini series that was made available on television around the same type of conversation, but making it more real and showing their life and connecting it to things that really transpired in the childhood spaces of both of these great men, as well as what transpired and led to them actually meeting. even though the impression was given that they did not have many opportunities to speak and work together, which in fact, those that know differently, right? And it's just very, very telling how we bring these conversations into honoring and celebrating African American History Month. So, with that, I think that's appropriate time for us to again bring up some of the word sound power. And I'm very cautious because I know that the music that I'm playing, I make sure that I have the permission of the artist and or it's music that I've created. And I think that that's what makes part of what we're doing in this wonderful platform so engagingly positive, so engagingly supportive, because it gives us an opportunity to do a variety of things. For example, there was a film that was done by the African American Legacy Network. That link, I'm really encouraging persons to also look forward to. If you just go to Vimeo, Vimeo.com, and then you put in the chat Whirlwind, the Marcus Garvey story, you will have a 7 minute, 14-second treasure on the life, legacy, contributions of the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey. I'll say it again. Produced by African American Legacy Network in 2022, there's a short film that's available free on Vimeo called The Whirlwind, the Marcus Garvey story. And I think that that is something that I will not play it here. I think it's best for persons to just go into that platform and take some time and share it with your family and friends. For persons that have no idea of, people are very quick to say, I remember Marcus Garvey. Marcus Garvey had the Universal Negro Improvement Association, African Communities League. Oh, they gathered more than 25,000 delegates representing millions of African people around the world in 1920 without internet, without social media, without cell phones. And they worked together and they established industry and economic drivers and educational support systems and healthcare. The Black Cross nurses were parallel to none. And that needs to be brought out into some of our conversations, some of our discussions. So I will make sure that I put that link on in our networks as well for persons that may not be as familiar as they should be. I'll leave that there for now. And that lets us go into some of our next selections that let us speak about how much we actually love our African continent, how much we actually appreciate the experience of the greatness of Africa. We're not going to focus on that which is negative. We're going to focus on that which is positive. So enjoy the selection.
I will love you. Oh. But now we understand how they pushed and shoved you into the dimly lit corners of their history book. But we know the truth, how we've searched and looked to lift our minds off of Europe's hook. And some still don't understand how much strength and willpower it took to get from under their spells and propaganda. And now them a wonder how we so proud and we dashikis and we boopa. We let them know we were orphaned, but we found our mother. We've been reunited with our lost sisters and brothers. Africa stretches forth her hands to her prodigal sons and daughters, scattered across the water. In this great disaster with him calling Ma'afa that was authored by those dirty, rotten, stinking, I won't say the word, but they tried to kill every last semblance of African spirit and skill. But destiny must unfold, prophecy must fulfill. Emancipation is a mountain, it's a real steep hill. And to get to the top for we is such a thrill. That's why from Cape Town to Cairo, Barbados to Brazil, no matter where we were taken, we are Africans still, and we will heal those emotional scars, and we will reclaim everything that's ours, and we will retake our place amongst the stars, and we will redeem our ancestors. Africa, we love you. Better days must come, we see our sun shining through. The storm clouds are moving from above you, and glorious things again will be spoken of you. Like cradle of humanity, birthplace of civilization, bringer of some sanity to these crazy modern nations. Sankofa is the only way out of this present situation. Looking backward to go forward to our future destination. Our relation to our history must be more than information. Emancipation is a feeling, it's an overwhelming emotion, inspiring devotion, and a commitment to undo the brainwashing and programming that they put us through. Africa is ancient, but we must experience it new. Africans, be persistent, and to thy own culture be true. Let our common experience keep us together like glue. With that ancient African science, with them call Ubuntu. Ubuntu. Excuse me if I get a little high, but I'm a part of a race that they try to wipe out of all historical sight. And now my stories come to light, and all those wrongs I want to right, with songs of redemption and words to fight the oppression that got we gripped so tight. But this song, it ain't nothing fresh nor new. The prophet has already said to you, Africans unite, yeah, as we're moving right out of Babylon, and we're moving to our father's land. Even if you've never been to the continent, the connection is evident. The retentions are a testament to ties that couldn't be broke nor bent. And even if you've come from far, you got to remember who you are. The shattered fragments of our souls, let us recollect. And never again should we forget that we are Canaan, we are Cush, Al-Kebulan, and Kemet. We are Yoruba, we are Hausa, we are Igbo and Mandingo, we are Fulani and Ashanti, Wolof, Serer and Koromanti. We are Ga, we are Fa, Ethiopian, Khoisan, Dinka. We are Kikuyu and Zulu, Madabele, Maasai and Bantu. Africa, we are you. Africa, we love you. And I've waited for so long to say it in an African tongue. People indulge me. I want to say it in Kiswahili. Nakupenda Africa. Africa, I love ya.
I share that from the poet laureate like no other out of the Republic of Barbados, Adrian Green. And that's from his collection that everyone should keep close, just in regard to that particular piece, Africa, We love you. And it's from his collection, Art is Chemistry. And that's African spoken word, right? Coming right out of the Republic of Barbados, which is one of the newest republics here in the Caribbean region. I share that so that persons, and last time I think I had a chance to just do a portion, but it's important to hear the entire piece because it allows for us to show connections in regards to not only African history, but ancestral, ancient African legacy. I'm going to say that clear. Ancestral, ancient African legacy. It's very challenging when persons, if you're not familiar, if you don't know, and many times we might read all the books we desire. But you know, when you hear that song, when you hear that poetic verse, persons have listened, whether it's to Audre Lorde, whether it's to Dr. Gloria I. Joseph, whether it's to the words of Marcus Messiah Garvey, Amy Jacks Garvey, Amy Ashwood Garvey, whether it's the words that we hear from Dr. Maya Angelou, Alice Walker, there's Toni Morrison, there's so many lyricists, literary scholars, activists. The list is long. You know, there's words from the Honorable Reverend Dr. Edward Wilmot Blyden. Most persons may not even remember some of the works that come from Casely Hereford or Dr. Kwame Nkrumah or Dr. Walter Rodney, persons that said it with a little more fire and were centripetal to forming new forms of governance. You know, when we speak of things like Pan-Africanism, persons see, you know, some people get a little shaky when you start talking about the term Africa. And it's really a great opportunity for us to show love and show respect for our great, 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 great grandparents. How about that? You know, and to envelope that legacy and to pull on what were the positives, not only the challenges and not just that one thread in the continuum of time, that one thread of colonization, enslavement, and the horrors that persons will use the term ma'afa. And in Swahili, ma'afa is like a hurricane, like a natural disaster. And over the course of time, many of us have come to see the ma'afa that transpired in the experience of persons of African ancestry in that frame. The more enveloping term is maangamizi. I'm going to say it again. Maangamizi, which is an intentional, institutionalized form of genocide and terrorism against people. Very different, right? So it's important that when we're using even these terms, that we start to envelope and share these different techniques so we would understand why in the 21st century, why in 2024, we're still in a quest for our self-determination. We're in many places, not all, but in many places, while we're still in a quest for the upliftment of our relations with one another, why there's so much war and friction, why drive-bys have come to be associated into the African American, African global communities, that it's normalized, why there's this relational shift, why there's a lack of loyalty and integrity and trust within our communities. And so that takes me right into Sister Queen Sharon Oshu's publication, Living Life is a Sacred Practice. And she says in her work, I am light and I am love. And I'm just saying, I just turned to that page. I didn't pick this one intentionally. I'm going by what Spirit guides me with this time. But I am light and I am love. When I flip again, I live my dream, and sometimes my dream lives me. Again, I live my dream, and sometimes my dream lives me. And what I am grateful for, and I want to read the section that the description that comes with that in the context of what we're saying. I am a dreamer who constantly dreams. The dream of life mocks my reality and pushes me further in search of my awakening. So that we are able to not only speak of our skills, talents, and expertise, not only go and stay stuck in the thread, in the timeline that was very challenging for people of African ancestry, but to speak of our resilience, to speak of our strength, to speak of our ability to be unified and liberated and have forms of sovereign social governance wherever we are. That restoration of power, that restoration of authority, that restoration of that spiritually grounded, blessed form of ascension that keeps the creator by all the names that we use, because that is another broadcast in of itself. We could just go through all the names that we speak of the creator as the Almighty, as Jehovah, as Yahweh, as Oludumare, as Netera. And we can keep moving and going and saying a variety of names. For some, they just say God, right? When we're speaking of Jesus or the illuminated Christed one, we can speak of that with a form of power and passion and love and engagement. Some say Jesus, some say Jesus, some say Heru, Elohim, Eloah. I'm just saying there's so many elements that come with how we speak of bringing air, those elements, air, fire, earth, water, and the fusion is spirit. So it is a few, but it's air, fire, earth, water, and spirit brought together so that we can actually bring this vibration of living life as a sacred practice. Discover yourself as a source of creation. And I encourage persons, if you have not had a chance to secure your version of Living Life as a Sacred Practice by Sister Queen Sharon Oshun Paris Chambers, you can just look for the Temple of Inner Peace on any of the social media networks, and you will be able to secure that. And I'll make sure that for our upcoming broadcast, hopefully she will have the time. She's an ambassador of tourism. She's a minister of tourism, excuse me, but she also does ambassadorial work out of Jamaica. And that's the only reason that she hasn't joined us yet. But we are looking forward to her making time in her schedule to be able to join us as well, alongside with her beloved husband, brother, I refer to him as Baba Theo Chambers. And together with the Temple of Inner Peace, that has been part of what I wanted to highlight this evening, and is to look at the ways in which we restore peace in our community. And when I'm saying peace, not a piece of, but the actual tranquility, the balance, the harmony. In the midst of all of the chaos that's surrounding us, this is an excellent opportunity for us to bring truth to power, whether you're celebrating, observing, commemorating African Black History Month. If it's going to be a time where you just feel like honoring the birth anniversary of Frederick Douglass, the birth anniversary of Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois. There's so many observances. There's a number of things that we get to celebrate. I know I have a celebration. Our twins, we have a fraternal twins, adults now. They celebrate on the 18th. So it's like a new baton, a new Ma'at Day. We just stop everything on the 18th for this year will mark 30 years. And we're very honored to be able to have young people that are engaged. You know, our guest that was planning to join us and will join us in March is, as I mentioned earlier, Genevieve Whitaker, JD, CPM. I mean, there's a number of letters to her background, but as a former legislator of the Virgin Islands legislative body, in addition to her being a trained international attorney. It's powerful to see the type of work that she's done with starting the Virgin Islands Youth Advocacy Coalition and keeping that organization going from when she was a youth to now that she's moving into the next layer of her adulthood and being able to pass the baton to other young people that are doing this layer of work, research, advocacy, activism, and much, much more. I want to close tonight with a couple of just reminders. I've mentioned some platforms in regard to looking at Asala. And as I mentioned earlier, I think it's important that persons go to the source, when we're looking at what is being observed for African Black History Month. Asala allows for you to see certain things. You can also look for the various, and that's asalh.org. And there you can go to that site and expand some other areas and arenas. You also have an opportunity to go to vimeo.com and look for The Whirlwind, the Marcus Garvey story. And again, it's a 7-minute, 14-second, professionally produced film by the African American Legacy Network. I think it's impressive. I wanted to send a special shout out to Brother Satori for just making that film possible and available. And plus, it is actually endorsed by none other than the surviving son of the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey, the Honorable Dr. Julius Garvey. I think it's a really wonderful opportunity for persons to learn a little bit more. We're going to, between now and the next time that I get to see you here in this network, we will already have our Virgin Islands Agriculture Fair, which is one of the largest agriculture fairs in this region, and here on St. Croix. And that will be during what in the U.S. is referred to as President's Weekend, from the 16th of February to the 19th. And there's also going to be a Virgin Islands Good Food Coalition. This is their inaugural conference. And, I really want to send a special shout out to Summer Sibley Brown for her leadership in organizing that as well. And that will be from the 19th to the 21st. So the last day of our Ag Fair until the 21st of February. And as I mentioned, there's so many other things that are happening. Please keep in touch. You can easily go to my platforms. You can look for ChenziRa Kahina, as I'm pretty much the only ChenziRa Kahina, and you'll see my face and some of the platforms. And I'll keep encouraging persons, stay in touch with us, because remember that culture heals humanity, land is our foundation, and spiritual harmony unifies us. We're looking forward to you sharing with us your ideas about how best for us to continue to build a new legacy. So let's keep building a new legacy together in the best manner and the best way possible. We'll close out with a little bit of music that gives us an opportunity to just talk about Nubian people, since we've been talking about our consciousness, our culture, and much, much more. And this is by Sister Queen Reverend Ivy Hilton, Shaddai, and Brother Plunky. And we want to again send a shout out to the crew podcast, the sun. Whoop, 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 whoop. And don't forget to join us March 7th, first and third Thursdays, as we keep this energy flowing of building a new legacy. Evening.